live.
Good afternoon, members. We are now live. So we're now live. Good afternoon, members. Tuesday, 8th of March at 3 p.m. We are now commencing Cabinet. Before I start, just to let members know, item 14 has been withdrawn. We're going to make sure that it goes through the appropriate channels for a decision. So I just thought I'd let you know about that. So if you can just make a note of that. Andrea, that would be very, very good. Membership of the Cabinet, we've got a full house, no apologies. Any declaration of interest, please complete the relevant form and hand it in to Andrea at the end. Admission of the public, we don't have any members of the public. Any deputations or petitions, we don't have any deputations or petitions. Questions by members of the public, there is no members of the public, so there are no questions. Questions by elected members, any questions from elected members? Councillor Gregg, have you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pandor. My question, does he agree with me? Do you agree with me, Councillor Pandor, that political parties should not be using taxpayers' money for their own benefit?
Completely agree with you. If they're using taxpayers' money for political parties, then I agree, they shouldn't be using that money.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Would you be willing to investigate why the Liberal Democrats appear to be using taxpayers' money in Lindley to gather and harvest email data and telephone data to use in electoral campaigns? Clearly, I'm sure you yourself, like me, campaign with party funds to get that data, so it's a little bit mystifying why Liberal Democrats are choosing to spend taxpayers' money on this, and would you be willing to look into that?
Councillor Gregg, if you've got some documents, I'd be more than happy to take them and pass them on to Andrea. Obviously, the allegations are very serious, and it would be not right for me to comment, but what I will do is I'll make sure that we have a look at this in detail. Andrea, can I just leave that with you? Thanks, Councillor Gregg. You've got us. That was just complimentary.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I echo the comments of my colleague about that. I think it is something that we need to look at, and perhaps if I could ask that maybe we review the policy around the provision of support to councillors to make sure that things aren't being done perhaps in an underhand way, and perhaps if they have been, we ought to be asking for the money to be refunded that's been incurred at taxpayers' expense.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Taylor. Like I said, I've just heard about this now. I've just got the paperwork, and we'll make sure that we carry out a full investigation, and if any review or measures need to be taking place in terms of policy, etc., happy to do that.
Different question, and it's possibly one that I'm not sure whether Councillor Mather or Councillor Simpson want to answer. And it's about a good news story, and it gives Councillor Mather an opportunity to hold something up. It's about the news about the proposals to be able to accept tubs and trays, and there's three, isn't there? Tubs, trays, and pots. Plastic trays and pots. I mean, the communication started to come out yesterday, which was great. Obviously, I've been involved and talked rubbish for the last year throughout the development of this waste strategy, and I've consistently said that I'll be happy to support publicising this as far and as wide as we can. When the information came out yesterday, it became clear very quickly that the comms strategy wasn't fit for purpose, because there was no information available to enable members like myself to be able to communicate this via social media. I've been posting it in village Facebook community groups so that people are aware of it, and there wasn't anything available. So I'd just ask you first, perhaps, Councillor Mather, to perhaps comment on that, or one of you comment, or both of you comment on that. Thank you.
Who's going to answer it?
I'll go first.
Councillor Will Simpson, and then Nahid, do you want to...
Yeah, Nahid, I think want to say something as well. Mine's just sort of a question back to you first, John, in terms of what do you think was missing? Do you want a graphic asset that you can post with the information? What is it that you feel that was missing that needs to be provided?
So what we were provided with was a PDF, which isn't a suitable format to post on Facebook or, you know, sort of, I tweeted it out and things. To be fair, the team came back with something for me, but this was Laurie and the waste team, the cleansing team, rather than anything that the comms team had produced. So I just think there's some learning in there. And perhaps if I can ask the cabinet members to just, when we are bringing forward comms strategies, make sure you're thinking about, you know, we've all got those community groups, haven't we, that we can share information on. We need to have the the format ready for day one so that we can get out there and start sharing that information. And that was, we got there in the end, but it was a bit problematic yesterday.
You know, thanks for that, John. I'm personally, rather than politically, a big advocate of effective digital comms, and the graphics are really important to that, like you say. I mean, can you not hear me? Sorry, Viv. I'll speak into the mic a bit more. Me and John are having a personal conversation rather than me into the mic. I was saying I'm a big advocate of effective digital comms and making sure that we get our message across effectively as a council. So I do appreciate the comment about how you'd like to have had a graphic ready to go for councillors to share. I think that's something we can reflect on. Personally, I have screenshotted, I was able, because we got it as a PDF, as you say, I screenshotted it on my phone and that immediately turned it into a picture that could be shared. But I appreciate not all members will have necessarily thought to do that. So yes, something to reflect on. But I think otherwise, the communication has been effective. I appreciate all of the members who've shared the messaging to get it out. There's going to be a leaflet going out to all households with a bin sticker that you're aware of, John, to make sure that everyone's aware of the changes that we're bringing in through the new interim waste contract. And I think it's a really exciting piece of good news, as you've said.
Nahid, do you want to say anything? You don't have to if you don't, but if you do.
Hi, John. You know, we're on part of that group that's going to continue talking about recycling and how we move forward in terms of these strategies. Some of the information is rightly embargoed, and so up till Monday, even the portfolio holders couldn't actually go out and put that information out. The infographics are there, but our own Friday Good News Stories actually pick it up. But we can always do more. And yes, we do need help, and it is going out district-wide. We want everyone to be part of it, and, you know, cross-party initiatives, so you shall get more infographics as we progress into this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. The point was I'd been making for a number of weeks in the run-up to, I knew that we couldn't share any information till Monday. And even when we were on the call last week, Nahid, I made the point about, can we make sure on Monday that we have suitable materials available for us to share in this manner? So someone somewhere wasn't listening, and I'm not holding, you know, anybody to account for that, but I just think we need to learn from it. That if there's a date when we start to go live with stuff, we need to have the information available in all formats at that date, not a few days later or a week later, or whatever it may be, because once you start communicating, you need to be able to communicate in all formats. Thank you, Chair.
Buzz, did you indicate to speak?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to point out there is a service there if any documents need converting to a more suitable format. I always email councillor support, and they usually get back on the same day to do it for me.
Thank you. Okay, John, you got another question?
Yes, it's on a similar theme really, but about a different issue. So shortly we're going to be communicating with residents about the rebate that's available for energy bills. Now I know that something's going out in the council tax pack with that, but in exactly the same way, it would be really helpful to have something suitable in a format that we can get out through the community groups, through Facebook and through social media, because it's really important, probably less so to the people that will get the refund automatically through the direct, like a reverse direct debit, but to the people who are going to have to come to the council to apply for it. So can we make sure that we take on board the learning from the waste, so that when we have a communication around this rebate, we're doing it in every format from day one, so we can get it out there and share it as wide and as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Paul? Councillor Paul Davis?
Yep, thanks, Councillor Taylor. I absolutely agree. I was in a meeting this morning where we were discussing some of the arrangements, and you're right, the real difficulties for the group of people, a significant group of people, something like 40% who are not on direct debit, and that's something that we're absolutely looking at how we could connect in particular with those individuals. But yeah, we'll certainly take on board what you said, and you're right, you know, we should learn any lessons around the format as well as the message. There will be a leaflet going out, which is a government leaflet. We've added to that leaflet a link, or the link that people can use to hopefully take up direct debits going forward. So obviously we're going to encourage that. But there is a real concern amongst that group who are not on direct debit about getting to some people who will not respond always to official communications, etc. So how do we work? We're looking how we're going to work through community groups, and obviously working through councillors as well will be important. So yeah, absolutely agree, and we will be doing that. So any suggestions that yourself have got, or any other members that you know of, John, that you think would be useful, please send it my way. I'd be very happy to pick that up.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Councillor Davis. What I found yesterday was that because we had a really good news message to get out about recycling, it was very easy to get it to go viral through community groups, not just to individuals, but I started talking to my WI groups and things like that to get it out there. So again, when we're talking about reaching those harder to reach people, they're the people we need to get hold of around applying for the rebate and getting the rebate monies to them. It's not just about just putting it on a Facebook, but it's then talking to people in our communities that can then share it in, WhatsApp groups that they have, or email lists that they have of members of various community groups. So again, getting it in the right format on day one is critical to help us do that. Thank you, Chair.
Paul?
Just to say, I absolutely agree, and I think that the most effective way is to start those conversations, that momentum with people, and again, particularly for some within the group that we're talking about, if they're hearing it from a trusted source, or what they see as a trusted source, they're likely then to respond. Yeah, absolutely take that on board. And as I say, the team are working on that at the moment. But I'll make sure I feed this back as an emphasis as well for that as well. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davis. Any more questions from any members? We've got nobody online. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 7, Annual RIPA Update. Councillor Paul Davis.
It's me again. Right, for those who don't know what RIPA stands for, first of all, it's the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. And we as a Cabinet have a role with regards to that in terms of providing strategic oversight and keeping and ensuring the Council's use of surveillance is under constant review. This is really the annual report on the Council's use of RIPA to Cabinet. As a result of the view of the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office that we use RIPA, that the use of RIPA should be considered more often than annually, what we've been doing is ensuring that there are reports made to our Corporate Governance and Audit Committee on a regular basis. That will continue, and that helps us ensure that there is that oversight. And what we try and ensure is that is on a quarterly basis. There have been no incidents which have required RIPA to be used in the period since the last report, and therefore there are no reports for me to bring to Cabinet for that period. So in essence, that is the feedback. We will, in terms of next steps, we will continue to review the training programme and keeping the training requirements under review. And clearly, as I said, we'll continue to make sure that feedback takes place with the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. This report is simply for members of Cabinet to note at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davis. I'd like to second that. Any questions or comments from any members? No, thank you very much. Quick show of hands to approve the report. Thank you, members. Item 8, proposed changes to West Yorkshire Joint Services Agreement. Again, Councillor Paul Davis.
It's me again. Right. Firstly, again, just to explain what the West Yorkshire Joint Services organisation is. This is an organisation which is governed by a joint committee to which each of 5 councils actually appoint members. And this committee looks at the services which are provided through the WYJS to fulfil statutory duties for all of the councils in such areas such as trading standards, weights and measures, archives, etc. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the West Yorkshire Joint Services. Currently, each council appoints 3 members plus the leader, and Wakefield MDC acts as the lead authority for the WYJS. In January of last year, the Joint Services Committee considered a paper on governance arrangements that had not been a review for quite a number of years, and it was felt it was appropriate to look at governance for the organisation at that stage. And the recommendation and the amendment that's been put forward is very straightforward, really. It's the amendment is about reducing the number of members from each council on the committee from 4, as I outlined earlier, that was 3 plus the leader, down to 2. It's noted, and this is no criticism of yourself, Shubia, that leaders rarely ever attend the meetings. I did not write that in the notes. No, but to be fair, this is the point, that they looked at this, and it is the case for all the councils, that clearly the key work is done by only a number of the members that attend. Also, it's felt that by reducing from 3 members to 2, this would ensure continuity of attendance and actually help ensure that we've got people attending who understand the issues within the committee. So that's the actual amendment that's been put forward. So the recommendation from officers and myself is that we approve the proposed changes outlined with regards to the amended Joint Services Agreement, and also that we authorise the Service Director for Legal, Governance and Commissioning to enter into the revised Joint Services Agreement.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I think the report makes sense. The leaders of all 5 local authorities in West Yorkshire as ex officios, and the remainder are from the local authorities, and we've got good representation. But I think it makes sense because it's an arm's organisation. They're doing some brilliant work, and why over burden it with board members, and especially leaders whose role really isn't to actually get involved at the level of detail, although we're ex officios. I think it's a straightforward report. It's streamlining the organisation. But I just had put that clarification in. Any questions from members? No, are we okay to move on and approve and move on? Thank you very much. Item 9 is Specialist Accommodation Strategy 2022 to 2030. Councillor Cathy Scott. Cathy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring today a draft specialist accommodation strategy for 2022-2030 for Cabinet to consider and hopefully approve. I will say it again, and I say it often in this chamber, our biggest challenge is that we're facing nationally, not only locally, is a lack of affordable quality housing in Kirklees. We recognise the need to develop high-quality specialist accommodation for those with care and support needs. We know it's the right the right accommodation, if they have the right accommodation, it can significantly improve people's lives. Whilst unsuitable houses, and we see some out there, they can be the source of our health and well-being issues, and also at a great cost. As part of the Housing Commissioning Strategy, this document covers people and other groups. We want this specialist accommodation to be appropriate, local, affordable, sustainable, supporting lifetime home standards and dementia-friendly designs into all of our homes. This specialist accommodation strategy has people at the heart of it, and this is what Kirklees does good. It will enable individuals to live independently and exclusively within their communities. We find that if you move people away, that can also cause health problems. They need to remain within their own communities or within their own homes or with people. Chair, I recommend to Cabinet today that the findings of the consultation are accepted and the work of the contributors be acknowledged. And I ask that you approve this strategy 2022 to 2030. Thank you.
Peter, you seconding it? Yeah. Councillor John Taylor, John, you got a question, comment?
It's more a comment than a question. Fully supportive of the strategy. My comment really is, where were councillors in all of the development of this? Because it doesn't appear as though there's been any opportunity for us, and I think all 69 councillors probably have varying experience, but will have experience of supporting constituents who have struggled in this area. So I think there was valuable insight to be gained if you'd have allowed councillors to make a contribution. So I'm a little disappointed that something's got to this stage without councillor involvement, and I'll repeat Jackie's, sort of oft-used phrase about councillors being at the heart of all we do. But obviously it clearly wasn't at the heart of this development of this strategy. And I think housing, particularly now that K&H has come back in-house, is perhaps something we ought to look at again about how we ensure that there is adequate opportunities for councillors to contribute, because it is an area where we all, every week, will deal with something in some shape or form, won't we? And I think, I don't have any problem with anything that's in here, but I think we've missed an opportunity there, and I think we're being perhaps not as respectful as we should be to councillors by excluding them from involvement. And I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Councillor Peter McBride, and I'll bring in Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This is an admirable, comprehensive report. My concern is the need for specialist accommodation not provided, and to know who does and where are the gaps. What I'm really saying is it's massive, this gap. We provide a tiny bit of the total need. Our concern should be with the total need. The council responds insofar as it can, but this is also an echo of the fact that we now have something just over 20,000 houses, once had 38,000 houses. But even then, with 38,000, the ability to respond to this was not adequate. That is not a criticism of the council, but it's indicative of the understanding of what needs to be provided for the people who are adversely affected. And I think we should be concerning ourselves with that. Again, it's no reflection on the council, but it's an issue that's got to be addressed.
Thanks, Peter. Really useful comment. Councillor Cathy Scott.
Yes, thanks for your comments, Councillor McBride. I'd just like to pick up on what Councillor Taylor said. Points you've made are very important. I think it's right, and obviously this document's been going on for a while, and councillors do have lived experience of things that do happen within specialist accommodation and things like that. But I'll just to remind everybody out there, in 18 months' time, the overall housing strategy is due to be reviewed, and I'll ensure that councillors are involved. I'll ask that specifically that they ask them to get involved, because this is about general needs housing when that comes up, and I think who better place but councillors at the heart of it, and will design needs better around people. So thanks for the comments. I will ensure that they do get passed.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? No, thank you very much. I think both John and Peter more or less are saying the same thing, that there needs to be a wider conversation, and especially what you mentioned, Peter, that the bit that we actually are going to be providing is a small part of the totality of the gap. But like you say, Cathy, this is part of the bigger housing strategy. So it's a draft. So there's a lot more work to do. And the report also says that we're not just looking at the demographics, but we're also looking at technological advancements, consumer trends, and the market. And I suspect the market is going to be changing very drastically because the way the housing market is going, I say we're flattening down, but recently properties, especially in my part of the world, one or two have gone up on sale for more than what the asking price was. So once again, John, thanks very much, and thank you, Cathy, for that. Can we show hands to approve that and we move on? Thank you. Next item is item 10, Cross-Council Corporate Safeguarding Policy. Councillor Carol Patterson.
Thank you, Leader. This report presents the refreshed version of the Cross-Council Corporate Safeguarding Policy. Safeguarding is everybody's responsibility, whether or not they have a direct role with children, young people or adults as defined by their job roles within the council. So the key message of the corporate safeguarding policy is that safeguarding is everybody's business and that all employees have a duty of care to safeguard, prevent and report any safeguarding concerns. Abuse, neglect and harm can take place anywhere, at any time, and be carried out by anyone. It's therefore important that all employees, elected members, commissioners and volunteers are aware of their moral and legal obligations to safeguard children, young people and adults and know what to do if they have a concern. So this document, which is attached as an appendix, acts as a statement to enable all council employees, elected members, commissioners and volunteers to understand that role and where to report it if they have any particular concerns. So the recommendations of the report are that this the corporate safeguarding policy refreshed be approved and adopted, that approval be given to delegate responsibility to the strategic director responsible for sponsoring the corporate safeguarding oversight group, which is David Shepherd currently, in conjunction with the portfolio lead for corporate safeguarding oversight group, which is myself, and with the corporate safeguarding oversight group, to review the policy and guidance annually and make technical amendments where appropriate, allowing engagement to take place with stakeholders. Should there be any new legislative requirements that would require a more fundamental change, then the report will be brought back to Cabinet for approval. And it's also recommended that the corporate safeguarding policy will be included in future in the policy framework that the Council considers each year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Biff-Kendrick, you...
I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? No? Can we have a show of hands? I thought you were going to put your hand up to say something. do you want to say something, Eric?
I did, yes. Many times, I'm sure we've all come across people who are concerned about perhaps another family that are living nearby, who are very reluctant to complain about the confidentiality of the complaining. Sorry, can you hear me now? And I've seen the number about the whistleblowing number, but I'm just wondering if it would be possible. When you report a crime to Crime Stoppers, you don't even have to give your name, and it will be logged and investigated. And I just wondered if that's the same for this whistleblowing number, because sometimes it can be almost dangerous, by the way, for some people to make a complaint, particularly, not everybody's sweetness and light out there, well, they're not. And some people may well be frightened to give the name. and that's quite understandably so. So I just wondered whether that is possible.
Before bringing in Carol, I think you're right, because a councillor, and don't assume it's in this local authority, actually reported something under safeguarding, and the councillor's details were given to the family, and the councillor now is terrified that, God, you know, my name is there, and obviously the family who's under investigation are not happy that the councillor did whatever the councillor did. So there needs to be some safeguards for councillors or anybody else to actually come forward with information. And you know, when you're talking about safeguarding, you know, you got to be very careful, because there's all sensitivity from across the piece.
Well, we have to safeguard, if you like, the people that are complaining, and if the councillors do.
I'll bring you out the end, Carol, because I think Councillor John Taylor has put his hand up as well.
I just want to echo what Councillor Firth said. I'm dealing with a case in one of my villages at the moment where a couple of neighbours have raised safeguarding issues around some children, and as a result have been intimidated by the guardians of the children concerned. So I think it's a very, very valid point that we do need to think about, because what we don't want is people being afraid of making those referrals and making those safeguarding reports because of the. I mean, in this case, you know, there's been fisticuffs outside schools and all sorts of things going on as a result of the family becoming aware of concerns being raised. It's been actively dealt with by the council. I'm very happy with the way Kirklees are responding to it, but I just use it as an example of, you know, the concerns that there are genuinely for people making those referrals. Thank you.
Councillor Kendrick, get your hand up.
Thank you. I understand the points that colleagues are making, but in the end, safeguarding is the most important thing, and any of those individuals can report something straight to the police and follow that route, you know. So it doesn't mean that they have to be identified as such at all.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Carol, do you want to respond, and then we'll move to the vote?
Just very quickly, I mean, yes, of course, anonymous complaints or issues could be raised. And the council will act on that where possible. I mean, because sometimes actually anonymous complaints don't provide enough information for the council to follow through on it, just in terms of no address of the incident or something like that. But ultimately, I mean, and they could still remain anonymous. But if anything actually ended up in court and witnesses were needed, then that may be a case where somebody would have to either breach that anonymity or find a way of being able to give their information without so. But what we mustn't forget, though, is not all safeguarding issues are issues of the type of nature that have been described. It may well be just that you're a neighbour across the road you haven't seen for a few days, they've fallen inside, the milk bottles are piling up outside the door, and hopefully the bin men might come along and say, oh, what are all those milk bottles doing there? And they would report that. I mean, there's no comeback on that type of issue, but we mustn't forget we're talking about all sorts of safeguarding issues here. But yes, anonymity would always be respected where needed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson, for that clarity. Can we all move to the vote? Thank you very much, members. Move on to the next item. Item 11, Leeds City Region Business Rates Pooled Arrangements for 2022-23. Councillor Paul Davis again.
Yeah, me again. Sorry about this. Yes, this is what the annual approval process to join the Leeds City Region Pool. The pool operates on a one-year basis, and we've been a member as a council of the race pool every year since its inception in 2013. The benefit to the pool arrangement is that the proportion of business rates growth across the pool is retained locally. And in other words, we don't lose money to central government. The risk element of the pool arrangement is that the pool is also responsible for a safety net provision at 92% 0.5% for any member council who sees that sees significant reductions in their income from the baseline government calculation. However, it's anticipated that none of the pool members are likely to fall below their business rates safety net thresholds either for the current year, 21-22, or 2022-23. In reality, regional pools from 2013 to 14 onwards have benefited pool members, including this council, through annually retained levy contributions into the pool ranging from between £5 million to £29 million annually. Specific proposals for the allocation of any retained levies will be considered through the LCR Business Rates Joint Committee throughout 2022-23. So officers' recommendations, which I support, are to approve the Council's membership of the LCR Business Rates Pool for 2022-23, to note the revoking of the existing pool on the 31st of March 2022, and to agree the formation of a new joint committee to oversee the operation of the LCR pool for 2022-23. Also to note the draft terms of reference and to delegate authority to the Service Director, Legal Governance and Commissioning in conjunction with the Service Director Finance to sign any relevant documents related to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paul Davis. Any questions or comments on that report? It's a pretty straightforward technical report in terms of rating pool. Can we have a quick show of hands and we'll move on to the next item? Thank you, members. Item 12, strategic investment in town halls, 2021-22, stroke 2025-26. Councillor Will Simpson, over to you.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I want to start by thanking all of the officers that have been involved in this, in particular Anne-Marie, Jenny and Jamie, because we really do have a brilliant team who do incredible work, and anyone who's seen what they've done at places like Cliff House in Shepley and what they're doing at Oakwell Hall, I'm sure will agree with that. I visited Cliff House on Saturday, bumping into Councillor Mather whilst I was there, and it's a very different place to the building I visited on a school trip 18 years ago. One key difference being that they were trying to get me to put a deposit down on a wedding this time, not with Councillor Mather, just for a bit of clarity. But Cliff House is now a beautiful multi-purpose venue that this council can be, should be and is very proud of, and this report is about extending that approach to investment to the flagship buildings that are our town halls. It's about making place-based investments in each of our town centres to regenerate these heritage buildings, to put them at the heart of our communities for years to come and to maximise the opportunities that we have from them. This report will deliver better outcomes and facilities for our communities, as well as deliver considerable returns on investment and facilitate further investment in the years to come. An allocation of £2.235 million in the capital plan for the strategic development of town halls was approved by full council at the budget meeting on 12 February 2020. A total of £400,000 has been drawn down in the last 12 months to take advantage of the buildings when they were closed, so that we could complete those works early, ahead of schedule, to minimise the disruption in both Dewsbury and Batley town halls. Through this report, we're setting out the strategic programme for the remaining £1.835 million, which complements associated investment under the council's capital condition programme. The investments in each of our town hall will be specific to that place. They're each in different towns, they complement their community offer in different ways, they have different challenges and they have different opportunities. So that means we are taking a place-based approach to upgrading each and every one of them to make sure that they have the best offer for their community and that they will be there proudly for the years to come. So members, I move the officers' recommendations and I hope you'll all join me in supporting this important and exciting investment in our towns.
Thank you, Councillor Will Simpson. Councillor Paul Davis, I'll bring you after that. You want to second that? And then...
Well, indeed, I'd like to second that and just say a few words. I think, certainly for me, this is a fantastic sign that the council is not only just investing in communities, but it's also, taking on board heritage, protecting heritage right across Kirklees, and ensuring that we absolutely treasure what we have and build on that. But I think more than anything, it's not just that. It's not putting something in a, if you like, a glass case and forgetting about it. It's actually making them fit for purpose as well in a sustainable manner. I think as Councillor Simpson was saying, and the way in which these will actually contribute towards their upkeep in the future and further development, I think is a fantastic approach. It really is quite inspiring when you go around and look what's being done. It's moved on so much from, you know, a long time ago. And like Councillor Simpson and like Councillor Taylor as well, I'm a big fan of Cliff House. My two daughters went there, I remember it well, and I went there as a teacher and actually stayed there as well. And it's been absolutely transformed, and it's fantastic to see that investment going forward, and we can see a long-term future for that. I believe that, you know, the other strategic investments around town halls will protect those buildings for a long time, and in fact will enhance their community role as well. So I absolutely support this.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davies. Councillor John Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Seeing as Councillor Davies name-checked me and Cliff House, I'll use it as an opportunity to just remind him he hasn't fixed the car parking yet. But anyway, but more importantly, the report quite rightly talks about Huddersfield Town Hall, the building we're in, as being the flagship, I think it's the flagship something or other, flagship building. One of the advantages, disadvantages of recent council meetings is we've been in the concert hall and we've been sat there for sometimes quite a long period of time. So you get the opportunity to just observe the building. And boy, does it look a bit tatty. And I'm somewhat disappointed. I'm pleased to see that there is an investment in the redecoration of the concert hall. But it looks, if I've read this right, as though that's likely to really happen in 2024-25. And I think the year, and I might have my years wrong here, but the year of music, I think, is 23-24. And it's really disappointing that our flagship building is going to have a concert hall that ought to be in the heart of the year of music, looking pretty poor. It's got chip paintwork, and I just wonder whether perhaps you could have another look and see whether it would be possible to get that work done for the year of music rather than a year later. I mean, I don't know whether that's possible, but it's just an observation that would be nice to have that concert hall looking fantastic for the year of music. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Paul Kay, Eric Firth.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I do applaud this investment in our town halls. They are fantastic buildings, and they really do need looking after. Can I make a point about, in particular, Dewsbury Town Hall? Thank goodness those seats have been replaced. I don't know if anybody's actually attended a concert in Dewsbury Town Hall. It's like, if it's a 2-hour concert, it's 2 hours of torture. Those seats should have been replaced when Adam were a lad. So I really am looking forward to visiting Dewsbury Town Hall when we've got some new seating. I'm going to mention, by the way, while I'm speaking, Dewsbury Town Hall could do with some paint outside too. That's possible in this budget. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Councillor Naheed Mather. Naheed.
Thank you, Leader. I'd be singing from the rooftops when it's all done, John. I think it's a very visionary strategic programme. Much needed investment, as you say. This is our cultural heart. This is our front-facing vision that when people come, they need to see what we have on offer. I went to Cliff House. I had been there before. It is a place where your children go, but they turned it. Here was the vision delivered in a very elegant manner, and it's almost using the opportunities available. So, for example, we realised the building is left vacant over the weekends. Why not use it for weddings? The day we went, it was fully dressed. We had loads of photographs. My daughters were saying, "Who's that?" And my husband said, "Oh, that's her young man." you know, he's taken my place. And basically, it was amazing. In the first hour, we had 2 bookings. And what they've done with vision is amazing. It's not just a splash of white so that anything can go. It enhanced the elegant building that we're talking about. So a programme well done, and looking forward to what else can be delivered. Thank you very much to all the officers who worked very, very hard.
Thank you, Naheed. Councillor Cathy Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo what Councillor Simpson says. The staff have done an incredible job, particularly during the pandemic, with continuity in getting places moving forward. I'd like to talk about Dewsbury Town Hall. Proud of it, it's an iconic building, but equally I need to say to the public out there, visit your town halls. They're incredible, and the things that they deliver, from your concerts to your weddings and different things, it's a meeting place. I can only suggest that you do go to your Batley Town Hall, Dewsbury, Cleckheaton, all these strategic assets that we've got. And I know I've possibly missed one out, Huddersfield. And take your point, John, it's a journey, isn't it? When you're just finishing putting your last piece of paint on, you need to start at the beginning again. And it's a constant flow. I just think that we've got incredible buildings. It's all about the blueprint in Dewsbury, and this is just another tick box for us. We want to finish this journey on a high. And I just ask people out there, take the time when you're walking around the town. Don't just look at the shop fronts, look above. There's iconic buildings. They are beautiful in all the towns across Dewsbury, Huddersfield, well, Kirklees basically. So yes, I fully support this, and I think their staff have done an incredible job.
Thank you, Cathy. John, I'll bring you back in, and I'll bring you at the end, Will.
Just echo about what's been said about Cliff House. I think what the team did really well was they pushed back really hard on the initial suggestion that it should be more in corporate colours, and insisted that it was decorated that was appropriate for the building. And I hope we remember that when we're doing the town halls, and we don't come in and they're all that, whatever that, what is our corporate colour, that bluey green thing, you know, so let's just remember that one. Just one other point to remember as well, it's great that we're spending all of this money on improving them. I think the reason why the concert hall looks like it does is because we've neglected the maintenance of them. So let's make sure that we're not neglecting the maintenance. The concert hall is just chipped where there's been equipment moved in and out, and nothing's been done about it when it's been chipped. It's been left, and then another bit's been chipped, and then another bit. So let's be proud of our buildings, and let's make sure that we're on top of the maintenance of them as well once we have invested in them. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you everyone who's commented for your really insightful and thoughtful comments, which I appreciate. I mean, I like the bluey-green Kirklees colour personally, but you're absolutely right that part of the vision around what we're going to be doing, and what we have done already in places like Oakwell and Cliff House, is when you go into those venues, you don't feel like, and you certainly don't want to feel like, you're going into a council building. We don't want them to feel like municipal buildings. They need to feel modern and vibrant and a part of the community. You don't want to go in and see a few council papers and some, you know, in trays stacked up. You want to go into a nice community venue that feels inclusive and like you want to walk through the door rather than go in and have an argument about your council tax. So we will certainly not be painting in the municipal corporate colours. Those aren't going to fit. We're going to try and make sure that whilst they are, of course, still heritage buildings, and they'll keep to the heritage that they have, that they're also modern and vibrant and don't feel like municipal buildings. On Cathy's point, I think absolutely fantastic. And you've said this before to me, Cathy. It was a couple of years ago, but it stuck with me. And you were talking about Dewsbury in particular, but I don't know how to think about it more broadly in terms of all of Kirklees. Sometimes when you're in our towns, it's easy for people to feel a little bit downtrodden about how sometimes town centres are. But then you look up at some of the buildings that we have, particularly in Dewsbury and now in the context of our town halls, and they're just absolutely gorgeous buildings, and that's why we're pleased to make this investment to look after them. On John, your point about phasing of works and whether we can do something with it for Huddersfield with regards to a year of music, a lot of the phasing is dictated by condition works that needs to happen. So the condition works are slightly separate to this strategic investment because the condition works are corporate landlord and capital service, which is my colleague Councillor Davis. And obviously we don't want to spend the £2 million on decoration to then find we need to replace everything that's behind that wall that we've just done, and then we've lost that investment. So a lot of this is dictated by phasing to make sure that we've got something going on throughout the programme, but that the condition work comes first and then the decoration and so on follows, because I think that's the appropriate way for us to do it. But I take your point, we absolutely want to make sure as the year of music happens next year, that it is the best possible year that it can be. And we want to make sure that our venues are appropriately dressed and make sure that people feel like they've had a fantastic year of music here in Kirklees. So I'll take that away.
I'm really sorry, I forgot, Eric. You did put your hand up and it's just that you've got my eye again, right? So my apologies. Councillor Firth, over to you.
It's fine, Leader. I can't let the moment pass, by the way, we need to remember a little bit of history here, and we need to thank our forebearers, if you like, the former councillors, Dewsbury councillors, who had the foresight to buy Cliff House in 1948. And what an investment that's turned out to be. I went there as a kid a couple of times, and when children used to go, when I went, we used to go for 2 weeks. A lot of things have changed since then, but I think they go for a couple of days now. Thank you to all the councillors that are probably all dead and gone now, but what foresight they had. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Yeah, I completely agree that the staff that we have worked very, very, very hard, especially in the pandemic, working in the background and doing all the work they've been doing. And, when you talk about forefathers, Eric, I saw a piece about Dubai 50 recently. Dubai 50, you may know that it's celebrating 50 years of Dubai. And many people know that in Dubai, there was nothing there, it was sand. And a lot of people will see as well. And it wasn't just about money. It was about Dubai, what it was then, the forefathers who actually launched 50 years ago what they were doing, had a vision, and it was about people. It wasn't about bricks and mortar. It wasn't about, let's make these big buildings and just let them get rack and ruin and get dilapidated. But that investment and that people and that passion to actually make a difference to local communities is really, really important. I think that's what this is about. And I remember a few years ago we were talking about closing town halls. Do you remember? It's like, I was sort of like campaigning, save my town hall and save this town hall and save Cliff House and all the rest of it. And I think that's where the partnership between officers working cross-party basis, cabinet having a vision, and having a vision for the place and the people. That's what this is about, I think. And that's why I'm really excited right here, that because of the plans we've got, okay, 2.2 million quid, but also the other investment that we're putting in across Kirklees, and I'm hoping that we'll get even more investment coming in, is about people. We are proud of the place, we are putting money back into the communities and investing in the communities, and hopefully in the next few years people will see that. And then they'll remember us as forefathers, Eric. Our forefathers, the great Eric Firth of Dewsbury, and the great Biff Kendrick of Hickman and so on. Excellent work, and let's go ahead and deliver. So can I have a quick show of hands and we move on? Thank you very much, members. Next item is item 13, Corporate Financial Monitoring Report, Quarter 3 for 2021 and 2021-22. Sorry, Councillor Paul Davis.
Thank you, Leader. This is a report back on Quarter 3 financial monitoring. So firstly, a forecast overspend of just under 1 million, so 0.9 million, as against 1.2 million a quarter two. And this is up against the 325 million revised budget. So there's a positive shift of 0.3 million since quarter two. In terms of COVID, the COVID impacts, the full year forecast as at quarter three includes 37.4 million additional COVID related spend. It was 26.5 million at quarter two and 5.8 million COVID impacted service income loss, and that compares to 5.8 million a quarter two. So that was exactly the same. But as you can see, an increase in terms of the additional COVID-related spend. So in terms of the COVID-related additional spend, the 37.4 million, of that 28.8 million will be funded through a combination of specific COVID grant funding from government, and this is from in year 2021-22, and we've spoken about this previously, and also funding received in 2021 and released from reserves in 21-22. The remaining 6.8 million is funded by drawdown from the COVID response reserve. Mention high needs as well. At quarter three, the forecast in-year spend on high needs is in excess of DSG funding. Allocation is now 9.9 million. Again, on track with a forecast at quarter two. Reserves, at quarter three, general fund reserves and balances are estimated to decrease through 2021-22 by 53.4 million from 197.4 million at the start of the year down to 144 million. We did estimate 149 million at quarter two. With regards to the collection fund, the estimated overall in-year surplus of 2.9 million represents an improved in-year performance, which we were forecasting relative to both quarter two and the original 21-22 budget. And as I say, is consistent with 22-23 budget assumptions. In terms of HRA, the forecast revenue outturn at quarter three is 3.2 million deficit. This is against the 2.3 deficit at quarter two, against an annual turnover budget of 92.1 million. When we come to capital, the revised budget for 21-22 is 158.5 million. The revised forecast capital outturn at quarter three is 153.4 million. So a 5.1 million variance. There are a number of budget proposals, as you'll see in the report, around Red Lace Court and Havelock Street, Ravensthorpe, adult care homes, and also property investment fund, which I'll give a bit more information on the latter as we go through the recommendations. So in terms of recommendations, in terms of general fund, 6.1 is to note, as is 6.2 and 6.3. On the collection fund, 6.4 is once again is just to note. When we come to HRA, 6.5 is to note, but also on 6.7, we as a cabinet need to approve the reprofiling across future years of the capital plan as set out in this report and at Appendix 6. Also at 6.8, we need to approve the capital scheme amendments as noted in paragraphs 1.12.7 to 1.12.13 of this report. So in terms of, I mentioned property investment fund, a little bit more detail. We need to consider we as a cabinet need to agree the offer to HD1 Living Limited an additional loan from the property investment fund of up to 2.5 million to support the redevelopment of 103 New Street, Huddersfield. That is subject to due diligence being carried out. And with regards to that, the Strategic Director, Growth and Regeneration, in consultation with the portfolio holder for corporate, will seek appropriate advice from the Service Director, Legal and Governance and Commissioning, and also the Service Director, Finance, in order to make sure that this due diligence is carried out on this particular offer. So, with that, those recommendations, Leader, I'd like to put that to Cabinet for consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'd like to second that. Councillor John Taylor, quick comment?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Davis. This quarterly report's always the most difficult one, isn't it, really, because it's just before the end of the year and it's difficult to say much about it, but there's two things that I'd like to pick up on, which are the first one. I've tried looking through the risk report register, and one of my concerns, and it's an immediate issue that's arising, isn't it, around the impact of the war in Ukraine and the impact that's likely to have on inflationary pressures and actually on our overall costs. And I've tried to find it in here, and A1 talks about responding to crises and events, but it's looking more at the community impacts, and A8 talks about above inflation cost increases, but neither of them really feel like they are recognising the scale of the challenge. And it'd be interesting to hear your comments on what actively we're doing at the moment to start scenario planning and thinking about, because this, you know, just the increase in energy costs, you know, just the fleet that we run, you know, the cost increases are going to be in there, and this will be all the way across the council's finances, won't it? So what thoughts we have on that? And then secondly, more specifically, around the HD1 Living Limited loan. If I've read it right, we're being asked to increase the loan by 25% as a result of increasing in construction costs and the challenges that they're facing as a result of COVID. I have no idea how much money this redevelopment of what I call a co-op building, but what the redevelopment of that building is actually costing overall. So I've no feel for what percentage increased costs there are here, but it takes me back to the discussion we had at the Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny last week, where we were talking about the bigger picture around the blueprint and how we were proposing to manage what might be significantly inflationary costs, given that we're already borrowing a significant sum to support the blueprint. What are we saying? Are we going to borrow more at a time when interest rates are rising, or are you going to have to de-scope part of the vision to stay within the funding envelope? So what this loan increase is telling me is that is a real live issue that I'm not sure was answered or addressed when we spoke at scrutiny, and I'm coming back with the same questions again. So I think it's something the sooner we start facing into, the better able we're going to be to mitigate the impacts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Taylor. Yeah, I think two very important issues. I'll take the latter first in terms of the loan. Yes, certainly it's a significant increase. It is very much not because of current circumstances. It is because of the issues that we faced. And we face, you know, not just us, but other organisations around construction costs and various other issues, COVID related in that regard. As it's really emphasised and said in the report, there is still absolutely the due diligence that will take place to make sure that this loan is done in the proper fashion, that we've assessed and we are and already are assessing the business plans of the developers, So there is an open relationship in that sense. We're not simply, and I'm not saying that you are saying this, but we're not giving a loan without fully understanding what their projections are in terms of their business plan going forward, in terms of the affordability for them, and obviously in terms of us, in terms of payments back to us as well. So that element has been gone through already. We are continuing to work on that, and certainly I've been very, very clear from my discussions that we have to have complete transparency around how this developer is working, proposing to work going forward. Because, just to explain that, this isn't the case of a developer putting something together and walking away. They will be running this business going forward, and therefore it's crucial that we understand that. So I'm at this point assured that we're doing that. In terms of further impacts, we believe from the work that we've done so far that on this due diligence that what they've asked for is sufficient. However, David Shepherd is employing at the moment some specialist advice externally to help us to ensure that we're absolutely crystal clear that what we're doing is solid and is prudent and is sensible as well. So we are really ensuring that due diligence is in place from that perspective. So just on that. In terms of the Ukraine situation, clearly, that's not something that would have been foreseen some weeks ago or some months ago, maybe some weeks ago possibly, but not some months ago. However, when it comes to our significant investments, particularly when it comes to the cultural heart, the blueprint, etc., I think, as you're all aware, there are various gates and various processes we go through to assess, as we go through those developments, what the risks are and how we finance and how we move forward with that. The finance team under Raymond have been anyway looking at funding arrangements which provide us with security in a long term. So that work is being done as well alongside that. I think also it emphasises something we've talked about at length in a number of meetings, and that's the essential nature of adequate reserves and how we need adequate reserves to make sure that where there are unforeseen risks, that we can be assured that going forward we have got sufficient reserves to cover our ability to provide services ongoing and to meet whatever loans, etc., that we're talking about. So I think from the way in which we've managed finance and continue to manage finance in a prudent and sensible fashion, we've mitigated some of that. However, I'm certainly not saying that we at this stage are complacent and feel that we've covered all of those challenges. And you're absolutely right. It is something that is being discussed. It is something that's being reviewed, and it is a live issue, within my portfolio and within finance. But certainly in terms of the structure of our investments going forward and the way that works and the gates that we have, the structure of our reserves, I think at this point, without being complacent, we feel that we're in a position in which we can still make really good decisions for Kirklees in terms of these exciting investments that we need within Kirklees to really pull us out of the recovery. So it's a combination of ensuring that we're doing something which actually helps us to move forward within Kirklees, but at the same time, clearly, we've got to make sure that we don't put our finances at risk and therefore put services at risk. So what I can assure you is absolutely, this is something that continues to be kept under surveillance and discussed on a daily basis.
Yes, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davies, but I don't think you actually answered the question I asked, because my concerns operate at several levels, and I am concerned about the large-scale investments, the cultural heart, the impact of cost increases on that, and how much of that has been factored in, and you know, and I've asked the question several times and never really got an answer. I accept I'm not going to get one about whether that would mean we would borrow more money or we would de-scope. But more pertinently, if I can say the word, my concerns are around the revenue impact of our day-to-day services as a result of what might be coming downstream, driven largely by energy costs. And I did say in my initial question, I gave the example about the impact on our fleet, the number of vehicles that we have and the amount it's going to cost us for petrol. But you then start thinking about the costs of heating, perhaps some of the, you know, buildings that we have, or the support that we provide in sheltered accommodation that's supported through K&H. It's these areas, and I don't feel the risk register picks that up. And other than words to try and reassure me that we're looking at it, I must confess, Councillor Davies, I'm not getting confidence that we have a plan about how we're going to tackle this. And it is something that ought to be almost under some form within finance, under some form of crisis management at the moment, because of the size and scale of the impact. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davies.
I think in terms of, if I take as an example, energy, absolutely correct. You know, we've already been aware of some issues, and I think from memory, I think I'm right in saying we built in an extra 700,000 into our budget for energy costs going forward. I think, you know, in terms of planning, certainly the contingencies that have been already built in, were very significant for the cultural heart and the blueprint, and those are based on projections around fairly recent projections, realistically on inflation, so certainly not being based on old inflation rates. In terms of the impact of the Ukrainian war and how that's going to impact, that is, and let's be fair, that is something that is literally just starting to hit us now. If we know that the government is struggling at the moment to respond in a whole range of ways, including access for refugees and whatever, because their view is this is something which is arising fairly quickly. Therefore, I think it's fairly reasonable to assume that as a council we would need a little bit of time to assess that impact and work on it. However, the inflationary issues were built into the budget, they were built into the projections. They weren't based on unrealistic expectations, they were based on rising fuel costs. The extra money was put in there, and I'll emphasise again, and we've had this debate about accusations that we had excessive reserves. That's why we have reserves in place for unexpected and risks that come through. Absolutely correct, Councillor Taylor, that we need to articulate that in plans going forward, and that will happen. But certainly, I would not like to create a picture that somehow our budget going forward and what we put forward has not built in contingency and risk factors based on the best information and forecasts up until a number of weeks ago. So it was based on that, and we will absolutely constantly review that going forward. And yeah, if there's a need to look at our plans and if there are risk factors financially in terms of our long-term plans, of course we'll consider that. However, it is a balance as well. So that risk factor is measuring up that risk against the risk of not doing anything to help our Kirklees recover from COVID and grow our economies. And if we grow our economy, as we're saying there, and create more work, better paid work, and therefore more spend within Kirklees, then that does help alleviate some of our income issues as well. So it's not an easy balance, one way or the other, and it's something that we have to take on board. But I hear what you're saying, and I'm absolutely in no way dismissing the seriousness of the situation we're in, but certainly in terms of the budget that we passed only a few weeks ago, there's very significant contingencies in place there. There are contingencies within the Cultural Heart Programme, the blueprint. We have reserves which we believe at this stage are sensible and measured and protect us to a significant degree going forward, and in no way are we complacent. So I think at this stage I probably couldn't answer more than that. And as you said, I know you're not expecting specifics in terms of actual plans as well.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davies. Councillor John Taylor, I'll let you come back in, and then I will have the final say, and then we'll move on. John.
Thank you. Perhaps Councillor Davies then will put in the public domain and share with me what the actual inflation assumptions were that were put into the budget. I have no doubt at all, knowing Eamon and his team, that they will have been well thought through and considered, absolutely, but they will have been based on what the situation we understood at the time, and that has changed significantly. So I don't think we can sit there and rest on our laurels and go, well, we put some contingencies in place, we had mitigation plans in place, because I doubt if they will be adequate. And my point is, things have changed since the budget. I know it's only a short period of time ago, and we need to be reacting to that. And I don't feel I'm getting any confidence that we are actually reacting. I think what I'm hearing is that we put everything in place in our budget and we had adequate contingencies in there. Thank you, Chair.
Quickly respond, and then I'll sum up.
I will be quick. Certainly can share, I haven't got that number off the top of my head, I can certainly share that with you, that's not an issue. Just one comment, I think it is really fortunate, isn't it, now that we're having this discussion, that as an administration, that we stuck to our convictions, and that we did not raid our reserves, and we were prepared to maintain those reserves going forward, because that is the whole point of having those reserves in place. That is our protection, that is our contingency. It isn't, I do disagree, we're not about us being resting our laurels or being complacent. I'm absolutely far from that. It is extremely concerning and worrying time. But I will emphasise the way in which we've approached the budget, the way in which we approached having our reserves in place, is to try and ensure that any unexpected, and I'll use the word unexpected risks, we can help manage. Will we fully cover them? I cannot, obviously, at this stage, say that we can fully cover all unexpected risks.
Thank you. Just a few quick points, Councillor Taylor. In terms of the cultural heart, there are big decisions to take place, and as a cabinet we need to reflect in terms of how we try and engage with as many councillors as possible, and that is something that we will do as a cabinet, and I think that's a fair point. You know, it's just that's our business, and we need to make sure that, especially in these turbulent times, we need to try and make sure that we carry as many councillors on the journey as possible, so they're fully informed. But in terms of the war in Ukraine and Russia, that's only happened literally a matter of weeks, and this report was, the Q3 report was probably done a long time before that. But there's a serious point there, because I don't know how much it's going to cost me from week to week in terms of me putting petrol in my car. Like yesterday I went and I think I put £10 more, and I put the same amount of fuel in. Next week, God knows what's going to happen. If you listen to Radio 4 in the morning, Sir Alan Duncan, who was the Foreign Office Minister with Boris Johnson, he actually gave a good analysis, because one of the things he said was, we cannot sanction ourselves into sanctions. So by putting sanctions on Russia, there are impacts, there are implications, and there are knock-on effects. Because the way the international economy works, everything's linked to everything else. And the example he gave was around fuel. So although we're talking about fuel is probably easier to actually ship from one place to another, because you can just barrel it up and ship it across. But the issue about gas is more complex, because the gas issue isn't about using the supply chain and moving it from one place to another. It's about making sure that we actually have the operators there to actually distribute it. And it's evidence emerging that a lot of the supplies are going to go under, so there won't be the infrastructure to move it around. And B, right, gas, from the nature of it, it's actually more fluid. And there are big issues that there might be an issue where there is no gas. So we're talking about a situation which is completely unprecedented. I thought the pandemic was something that was unknown and never experienced. The war in Ukraine is probably another crisis, right? Yeah, but that's a crisis that we can manage and we can do something about. You know, it's human made. The pandemic was something that was due to nature. So as a council, we will do everything we can. And I think Councillor Paul Davies is right. You know, we have a reserve, and we always go on about the reserve pot, that we've got loads of reserves. I'm hoping we do have loads of reserves, to be honest with you, because, you know, the way the world's going, right, yeah, you know, if things carry on escalating, you know, my own fuel bill has actually gone up by £100, and it's going to go up by another £100 in April, and another £100. I'll be ending up paying £600 a month just energy bills. So we can only do what we can do. We can only look at the variations and the variables in terms of, you know, our financial planning, the way we do, because every day I hope and pray that the war actually finishes, they come round, negotiate, and bring peace back in, because otherwise, right, yeah, you know, in a situation of war, even the insurance companies won't underwrite that, will they? You know, so where do we go? It is worrying, but I don't want to sound on a negative note, right, or as upbeat, right, yeah, until John, you know, but we will do what we can, but one thing for certain, John, we will try and get as many councillors on the journey, and that is something that I hear loud and clear. We need to do that, because, you know, we as a council are at our best when we all work together on a cross-party basis. Thank you very much. That's the end of the meeting, and good night and God bless. Oh, sorry, sorry, voting. I'm getting carried away. Are you all okay to agree with the recommendations put forward by Councillor Paul Davies on item 13 on the quarterly report? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Nahid, for reminding me.